everybody. Karen Mobley, Scott Fulton here for ZDNet. The question today, can 5G save the economy from a COVID recession? A lot to unpack here, Scott. You know, a new report from Nokia, of course, forecasts that 5G wireless could add 8 trillion, of course that's trillion, with a T, dollars to the global economy by the year 2030. But here's the catch. As we know, businesses would have to adopt 5G technologies, and that means inside their operations. So not just the phones, but servers and devices, all of that alike. So it could be just the economic life raft we need, possibly, but how much possibility in those numbers there? So Scott, the question for you, thanks for being with me today, of course.
Good to be here.
We're glad you're here in these crazy times. You know, we've been reading on ZDNet, of course, that 5G is showing first signs of becoming a dud potentially. Isn't it too late to be measuring, though, 5G's projected gains on a plausibility chart?
Yeah, some of my ZDNet colleagues who have been testing 5G bandwidth results on their brand new iPhone 12s and things like that, they say, hey, you know, this is kind of marginally better. But when it sits on a few of these people who think, well, what is it like as a real boon to the consumer spectrum? They say, you know, it's kind of a dud. People are burned out on 5G. It's become it's worn on their senses over time. It's like too many campaign ads. When they see the ads for something next that'll give them a beautiful 5G future, it's like, I saw that 2 years ago. So the question is, where's payoff? If you recall 5G's original value proposition, as we covered it in ZDNet, the idea was that it was supposed to generate a lot of consumer interest. That consumer interest would spill into not only phones, but tablets, computers, devices for our homes that could sense our activity, that could keep us safe, all types of kind of an ecosystem of devices, and people would invest in that. And people actually have started to do that to some extent. The problem is that a lot of it can still easily depend on the 4G LTE network that we already have. 5G is not an obvious boon to that stuff. And also, a lot of us are sick. And we've been at home for a while, and we've been wearing masks when we go out, and we've been staying 6 feet apart. And a lot of that has taken a real toll on economic activity. So it's hard to get excited about anything. So you almost need a new value proposition to make 5G feasible. Of course, you might be wondering, with so many people in the hospital, with so many people recovering, why should it be to our national interest to save somebody's technology? And the answer may come from Nokia, whose Bell Labs, you may recall, Bell Labs is the same Bell Laboratories which for the last century has produced the leading advances of telephony. Well, it's part of Nokia now, but it's also run in New Jersey, where it always has been. And part of what they are suggesting now is that 5G as a business accelerant could generate activity in the regular economy, activity that's actually measured somewhat. The objective here is to try to find another way, a jumpstart factor that will help us get the income and revenue that's necessary to afford the massive infrastructure shifts that 5G will require.
All right, and Scott, in talking about the virus, you know, we're heading into the winter months, and it's picking up steam. More and more people are getting infected. So the question would be, why should we, be devoting 8 cents, let alone $8 trillion to securing the 5G value proposition here?
It may be a necessary thing that we have to do as a planet for our own recovery. I know sometimes we talk about 5G as this miracle product, as like the Retsin in your breath mint. But, and certainly I need a breath mint right now, as much talking about it as I've been doing. But instead of that, what 5G actually is the foundation for a future communications infrastructure, one of the most powerful and important parts of a global economy. it the thing about infrastructure is it's an investment that constantly takes more and more out of us. We are spending more and more in capital to just to maintain the levels of infrastructure that we have. 4G was supposed to be kind of a trajectory away from that so we could get to infrastructure growth and profitability from infrastructure without having to devote so much resources to it. But to some extent, we figured wrong. It costs more than we thought it would, primarily because the equipment that's in 5G radios, that's in 4G radios, excuse me, that is not lasting as long as it should. It's not as easy to cool as it has been before. It takes more cost. So we're spending more and more to try to keep things on a level. I'll kind of show you what that looks like. This is a chart that I'll bring a picture of it. I'll bring a picture of this chart for you so you can see it up close because it's really hard to see right here. This is global gross domestic product expressed in terms of US dollars. And the curve that I'm following here follows a line from 1960 to 2019. And you can kind of see as I follow that curve that it's a nice slope until it gets to right about here, the mortgage and housing crisis. The last great recession that we had is this chunk, this pothole that we hit up here. And we were doing a nice growth trajectory and recovery back up to 2019. So you can imagine what's going to happen with 2020. It's going to take the dip and go this way. It takes a lot of effort to sustain this level of growth. When you look at that type of growth in terms of a sustained level and in terms of a constant growth amount over time, when you look at it in a chart like this is a developing market, an emerging market, and regular market productivity growth since 1981. It's been a zigzag Wells Fargo wagon path that's led to essentially flatness. In other words, we've taken a zigzag roller coaster ride, but we really haven't improved the extent to which our capability to grow improves. We're not getting stronger as a planet. And as a nation, as the United States, we're not getting stronger in being able to contribute to the global economy. And the truth is, as we continue to expend more and more and more on maintaining the physical infrastructure and the digital infrastructure that we have, we enter a phase that's very much like alcoholism. You need more of it just to maintain a level. You become dependent on spending more and spending more just to maintain this flatness. Now here, that huge chunk, that was the last great recession once again. So you see what the housing crisis did to the world. We leveled off pretty nicely, but we've been at a flat level. And this general red line down here, which follows the growth pattern of mature economies like the United States, it's not as flat as you think it is. It's actually going down a little bit, which means we're growing at a slightly lesser rate when all is averaged out year over year. So what we need is a way out of this pattern. We need a kind of digital infrastructure that can catalyze a new wave of economic activity. And that's what Nokia is kind of proposing here. The way it's going about it may generate some controversy. It's created a new field that it calls 5G plus, and that's going to raise a lot of ears to say, oh God, not another 5G derivative. Well, what they mean is the type of industries that are inspired by 5G to do something with it and create a productivity plan based on that. Now, they use some of their own customers as examples, including, like, for instance, a notable automotive production firm in Germany, which there are only a handful of these. So you can imagine this is one of the major automotive firms in Europe. And they've been moving to a structure that involves the use of 5G wireless to help parts of their factory communicate with one another. And as a result, they've been seeing some productivity growth. So Nokia's people are thinking, well, what if we take that level of productivity and apply it to the automotive sector, and then move it out of just Germany and apply it to the automotive sector in Europe, and then apply that aggregate to the automotive sector in the world, and then apply similar levels faced with similar industries like healthcare, textiles, petroleum, and do that similar type of aggregation. Soon you get a figure like 8 trillion. And that's where the economists will stop you and say, that's a lot of aggregation. You're taking early adopters. You're getting the growth pattern from an early adopted cost reducing platform, which can really generate a lot of productivity, and assuming that you can peanut butter it across the planet and make it apply. And it might not be doable. And it's a good thing to look at the way economics actually works to try to see how we can break this pattern. But sometimes in so doing, we kind of de-evangelize ourselves from wanting to go through with it. Once we find out that 5G may not be an $8 trillion boon by 2030, maybe something lesser, maybe we back burner it. And there's a danger in doing that. So I see what Nokia is trying to do here, and that's a lot of what we'll explore in our upcoming report for ZDNet.
Yeah, a lot to consider there, Scott. And I know some would say that it sounds like what you're leading up to is the reintroduction of 5G as more of like a social program, and there has to be a danger, many would say, in thinking that the government can provide the solution, to this dilemma when others have failed.
Yeah, making a social program of it, that's going to send up red flags on all sides of the political spectrum. In the Great Depression, we had a great social program in the United States, the Works Progress Administration. It put people back to work, put my grandfather, my great uncle to work, building infrastructure all over parts of the United States. They helped, for instance, build the Tennessee River Valley that helped flood the water into Oklahoma, that made the lakes that in lakes like Tenkiller and Eufaula, that enabled there to just change the texture of the land so it was capable of being farmed again. And the WPA, in that respect, for the 1930s and early 40s, really did help change the world. And a lot of people suggested, well, let's do something WPA-ish to lift the world out of the COVID miasma and to have something to work for again, as well as to revitalize a chunk of infrastructure. Digital infrastructure is as important to the world as physical infrastructure. And in one level, I really think it should be evaluated on the same row of the charts. And this type of reinvestment is absolutely necessary, but the problem is making it a social program and assuming that any government in any type of structure, no matter how socialized or libertarian you make it or leave it, if you have some type of social center, a center of infrastructural security that subsidizes these programs, you're also taking competition out of the picture. You're eliminating one of the main factors in a free enterprise reduces cost. And remember, gross domestic product is a factor of productivity, and productivity is a factor of reduced cost. If you eliminate competition and you set the prices for something, you can set them what you think is artificially low. It won't be low over time. They will become relatively high, higher than they could have been if you had left things as a competitive market. So there's a danger, and if there are any cabinet officials in the United States government, take notes now. There is a danger in subsidizing a technology, but expecting the payoff to be that you as a government own a stake in the technology. that it is somehow yours, that the spectrum is yours, that the company that allocates the spectrum is yours. Because when you do that, you fix prices and the market changes. The market adapts so that the prices you fix are artificially high. And it makes it harder and harder and harder for that program to contribute real productivity, because productivity is a factor of reducing costs. Reducing costs happens when you have a competitive market. If you make it anti competitive, you are chopping yourself off at the neck.
Oh, as I said, a lot to consider, always giving us a lot to ponder, Scott. When and it's a really involving situation, and we're still in a time with our new normal, and finding ourselves in a place that we never thought we'd be in.
Soon, more insomniacs will be watching Scott Fulton videos on ZDNet than from any other source. And if you get a good night's sleep tonight, you're welcome. Um, but yeah, sometimes we have to dive into the deep end.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's important things we have to talk about. Well, Scott, I know you have much more on this, of course, up on ZDNet and your full article there. And we appreciate all of you guys watching here today, and we hope you'll check that out and much more on ZDNet.